What are your expectations in terms of the potential of Iran attack on Israel, the timing of it, the scale of it?
Israel has been waiting for 2 weeks now, since the assassination in Beirut and in Tehran, for this retaliation from Lebanon, maybe also from Iran. Time goes by. It's not clear when, what, if will happen. Definitely the waiting period is enabling international diplomacy to come into play, and we see not only deterrence efforts of stepping up military equipment and military presence in the region, not only promises by Arab countries neighboring of Israel to foil attacks coming over their airspace, but also the American diplomacy trying to squeeze these negotiations for a ceasefire and hostage release deal between Israel and Hamas that have been going on for nearly 7 months in an attempt to frame tomorrow's summit in Qatar as something that is dramatic, that may lead to some results, although the signs on the ground, and maybe Blinken's postponement of his trip as well, does not indicate that the key breakthrough will necessarily happen tomorrow.
Israel does have this strong support from the Western allies, including the United States, of course, for now. But I just wonder how sustainable this patience is, especially coming from the Biden administration, given the November elections, as well as the U.S. assets in the Middle East region.
The support to Israel vis-a-vis the threats from Iran and Hezbollah, I think, is sustainable. I think the U.S. sees that as part of its national security, key interest in the region. Its goal from day one after October 7th to prevent the spillover of what happens in Gaza to a regional war. Now, we see the regional conflict already happening. We see Israel and Hezbollah fighting. We see the Houthis, we see the Iranians. But all of that is happening below a threshold that leads the region to a total collapse and total flare. The current situation with threats by Iran, by Hezbollah to strike major cities in Israel, possibly causing civilian casualties, can lead to further deterioration that the Americans eagerly want to prevent. So on that front, I think the support from Washington is something Israel can rely on. On the Gaza front, I think there is increased criticism by the Biden administration, not only on how Israel conducts itself on the ground, but also on the fact that Netanyahu is not going the extra mile for a deal that the American administration is heavily invested in. And we saw it just when Netanyahu was in Washington several weeks ago, how that was the major talking point by his U.S. counterparts. Get the deal done, do it quickly. The summit tomorrow, again, is an attempt to move it forward. But what happens in Israel is that we see the prime minister adding conditions, not really having the political will to sign the deal. Perhaps the same is happening with Hamas. And therefore, tomorrow seems like kind of a stuck summit, not something that will bring real benefits immediately.
What do you think is the Israeli leader, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu's strategy right now? Is it just committing to sort of prolonging conflict as long as he can?
There is a differentiation here between the fronts, because on the regional front, I don't think Netanyahu wants a regional war. I don't think that serves his interest, not politically, definitely not the national interest of Israel. The damage that will happen to all sides involved will be dramatic, and that's not something that I think Netanyahu wants to see happening. Nevertheless, on the Gaza front, I think Netanyahu does calculate that he has political benefit from prolonging some sort of a war situation, because the war in Gaza is now at a different phase. It's not the high-intensity phase in which Israel has been operating in all the cities in Gaza. That's already over. Now we're talking about maintaining Israeli presence in the Gaza Strip, about ad hoc raids on different spaces. That's a capacity that Netanyahu wants to continue to have. It showcases his strength in maintaining the Israeli presence in Gaza, going after Hamas repeatedly. It plays into his political base, but it goes against the will of the majority of Israelis that want to see the hostages back home, that wants to see diffusion of tensions with Hezbollah, and that understand that accepting the ceasefire deal that is on the table is basically the key way to go. So there's a conflict here between the prime minister and his political motivations to maintain his coalition and what the majority of the Israeli public and security establishment want to be seen.